So here's what I really can't get over in regards to this Philly team. When you talk about perfection, perfect seasons, perfect rosters, all of it, I think you do it in two big ways. The first way is hindsight plus roster. You know, how many Hall of Famers did this Super Bowl champion have? How many All-Pros? How many Hall of Famers did they play against? How many All-Pros did they play against? You know, like a general hypothetical Madden game framing, almost. If we were to put this team up against other teams, how well would their roster fare? How good were their players? And Philly, well, a top 3 defense, a top 3 offensive line, a top 3 running back, and a top 3 receiving core, I don't think anybody anytime soon is going to try to say that this was not a talented roster. That's the first thing we all do, but it's not the only thing, because the other thing that really matters is narrative. When you think about that team, however good they were, however talented their roster was, their quarterback, their coaching staff, whatever, how much adversity did they have to overcome? How often did they play their best football? This is why all of these years later, we still talk about that one Miami Dolphins team that played a perfect season. And that's where I find Philly really interesting, because I think from a roster standpoint, I'm pretty comfortable putting this up there, all time in the salary cap era. But more importantly than that, at least in some ways, because we've seen a lot of talented rosters in the salary cap era, is the fact that this Philly team almost always played to the standard that their roster held them to. They almost always played the right type of football. They rarely slipped. They rarely found themselves behind. They rarely trailed in football games. Here's what I'm talking about. When you think of some other great teams, you know, any Tom Brady team, any of those Patrick Mahomes teams that have won Super Bowls, at some point in their seasons, more often than not in the playoffs when they're playing better opponents, they play an uncharacteristic game. Maybe they fall behind and they have to claw themselves back out of a deficit. Maybe they have to deliver late in the fourth quarter of a really close battle. You know, these are generally the moments that we associate with forging a legacy, defining who you are, all of that stuff. Now, this year's Eagles, they never really had that, and I mean that as the utmost of compliments to Philadelphia fans. This is a team that trailed by 10 or more points twice all season. One of those times was in the Tampa Bay game where they were down Lane Johnson, Devontae Smith, and A.J. Brown, and the other time was in the Baltimore game. That was a deficit that they recovered by the second quarter. This is a team that, through pretty much the entirety of the regular season, along with the entirety of the postseason, never had to play that sort of situational football that I'm talking about. They leave no holes for us to poke in their season after the fact. 16-1 after the bye, 1 loss with Kenny Pickett as quarterback. I believe the term for this, if I'm not mistaken, is juggernaut. Through and through. The roster is undeniable and has been for a while, but also now with the gift of hindsight with the season wrapped up, their delivery is undeniable. The fact that pretty much every game they played, they were excellent on at least one side of the football, if not both. And the fact that on top of that, in their most important game of the season, in their game on the biggest stage, they play their best football against the best quarterback in football right now. This was the 5th loss of Patrick Mahomes' entire career by more than 1 score. It's insane. I mean, for my money, I think I would put it as a top 3 team I've seen in my lifetime. I think that Howie Roseman is the best GM that we've seen in the past decade, maybe outside of Bill Belichick, but that's my personal vote. And maybe that's what's scariest about Philly too. By a snap-weighted age, this team is 30th in the NFL this year. They're really, really young. So in many ways, there's no reason they shouldn't continue to dominate next season. Amazing season from Philly overall. Congratulations to them, and I hope we all are appreciating the gravity of what we've witnessed. I'm certainly trying to, if that's not clear.